Okay, I think we're ready to begin. Welcome, everybody, to this edition of our Ask the Expert webinar series. My name is Lourdes Quintana, and I am the Outreach and Engagement Manager for the Sharp Syndrome Foundation. We're really happy to have you tonight because we have a very special group, a wonderful team from Perkins School for the Blind, and they're going to be talking about all the ways that you can play. They're going to be reviewing recreational equipment and programming, which is perfect now that summer is beginning and our families are trying to find ways to keep their kids busy. And even if you're an adult, this is something that the whole family could do together. But before we begin, let's just take a moment to review our accessibility features.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jancy. I'll be one of your Spanish language interpreters together with my co-interpreter, Kenton. We ask that you please speak one person at a time as we can only interpret one voice. Speak slowly and always be mindful of the speed at which you speak, especially when you're reading text directly to facilitate simultaneous interpretation. Once the interpretation feature has been turned on, we ask that everyone please select either the English or Spanish channels. Everyone must select a channel. If you're fully bilingual, please select your channel of preference as well. To access interpretation, if on a computer, select the small globe icon that will appear at the bottom of the screen, or if on a mobile device, select the three dots that say More, select Language or Interpretation, choose the channel of your language of preference, and click Done. If you have any issues with interpretation, please contact either of the Spanish interpreters so that we can help. Thank you for your commitment to language justice and thank you for your attention. Now I'll be switching to Spanish before we start with the presenters. Buenas tardes, soy Yancy. Habrá interpretación al español durante esta llamada. Seré su intérprete de español e inglés junto a mi colega Kenton. Le pedimos que hable una sola persona a la vez, ya que solo podemos interpretar una voz. Por favor, hable despacio y tenga siempre en cuenta la velocidad a la que habla, especialmente cuando lea texto directamente, para facilitar la interpretación simultánea. Una vez la función de interpretación sea activada, le pedimos a todo el mundo que seleccione un canal, ya sea el inglés o el español. Para acceder a la interpretación, si está en una computadora, seleccione el icono del globo pequeño que aparecerá en la parte de abajo de la pantalla, o si está en un dispositivo móvil, como un teléfono o una tableta, seleccione los tres puntitos que dicen más, seleccione idioma o interpretación, elija el canal de su idioma de preferencia y haga clic en listo. Si tiene cualquier problema con la interpretación, comuníquese con cualquiera de los intérpretes para que podamos ayudarle. Gracias por su compromiso con la justicia del lenguaje y gracias por su atención. You may now enable interpretation and begin. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, ahora vamos a abrir el cuarto de interpretación. Muy bien. También quería dejarles saber, and I also wanted to let you all know that closed caption is also an option. You could just hit on more in the bottom of your screen and choose closed captioning, as well as we will have ASL interpretation throughout our presentation. Our presentation will last around 1 hour, and we're going to have around 20 minutes for questions and answers. There's also a box in the bottom of your screen that you could add your questions as you go, as the presentation goes, and we'll take time at the end of the presentation to answer any questions or have any kind of interaction that you might have any questions or anything that you want to bring up to our presenters. So without further ado, I would like to call in for Emily, and she's gonna get our presentation started.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Ways You Can Play, a review of recreational equipment and programming. And thank you for being here with us today. Next slide. So I'll take a moment to introduce us, the presenters. My name is Emily Weber. I am a physical therapist. You'll be hearing from myself and Matt LaCortiglia today. who is an APE teacher. And also on this call are Maebh, Barry-Reardon, and Lauren Kling. They will be fielding questions, and you'll hear from them at the end answering all the questions that you may have. And all of us work at Perkins School for the Blind in Massachusetts. We work with individuals with charge syndrome and other children with deaf blindness and multiple disabilities. Next slide. Just a quick disclaimer before we start. We are going to be speaking today from the perspective of clinicians and teachers who work with individuals with charge syndrome. And everything that we share is based on what we have observed and not necessarily directly from lived experiences of people with charge themselves. So we want to make sure that we are also respecting everyone's individuality and their right to speak up for themselves and what they enjoy when it comes to play and physical activity. Next slide. So a quick overview of what we'll be talking about today. We are going to start with the benefits of physical activity, and then we will talk a little bit about activity selection and accessibility. We will give some examples of home and community activities that are available, and then we will go into obtaining equipment, funding, and different resources that are available. Next slide. Okay, so let's talk about the benefits of physical activity and play. On this slide, we have an image of a young girl with charge running outside. Next slide. So one of the main benefits of physical activity is sensory regulation. And so we know that movement stimulates the vestibular system, which is very important for kids with charge. It can be underdeveloped, and movement is very important. Many individuals with charge also seek proprioceptive input, which involves pressure through their joints and their muscles. It helps them figure out where their body is in space and feel more confident and secure. Movement can really help with that. Whole body coordination is also an important skill that carries over to functional mobility tasks and activities of daily living. And many kids with charge also need a high volume of movement throughout the day. So play, sports, recreation, leisure activities, all of these things can be added to their repertoire of options so that they can meet the sensory needs that they have. On this slide, we have two photos, one of a boy using a swing and one using a slide. Our next slide. Physical activity is also a great way to advance motor skill development. So we all know how significant of an impact balance is for kids with charge. So physical activity is a great way to develop balance reactions and improve balance confidence. Coordination, as I had mentioned before, can be improved by participating in a variety of recreational activities. And then the skeletal system as well, so including the bones and the joints, they really need a lot of weight-bearing and high impact activities to develop. And in addition, when we're thinking about preventing things like osteoporosis, joint dislocations, scoliosis, things that are common in individuals with charge later in life, starting that physical activity and improving those motor skills early is really beneficial. Additionally, being physically active can prevent other issues later in life like pain, stiffness, those skeletal changes that I mentioned, as our body continues to grow and the muscles need to keep up with that growth. So we have to make sure that we are promoting that motor development. On the slide, we have a photo of a student playing golf and a student using roller skates. Next slide. So in addition to all of these motor benefits that we've talked about, there are also a lot of social and emotional benefits of play and movement. Making friends and building a community and a support system is extremely important. That can be achieved through a lot of these community programs that we're going to talk about. Being on a team also comes with responsibility, and that's really meaningful for individuals with charge and for all developing children to carry that responsibility. Physical activity and play and sports provide natural opportunities for self-advocacy and communication with peers, with adults, just a lot of natural opportunities to communicate. And in addition to that, making choices that goes along with self-advocacy and improving those communication skills. We want all of our children with charge to have a lot of self-confidence and confidence in their physical abilities. So sports is a great way to promote that. It's also beneficial for the child's family and for their community to have kids with charge involved in all of these areas of leisure participation in order to promote diversity and really make sure that that individual is a part of their greater community. We want to talk a little bit about lifelong healthy habits. As you can see here on this slide, there's two photos, one of a student when she is younger, bowling, and that same student when she's older, kicking a soccer ball. And really notice how important it is that active kids become active adults. And so the earlier in life that we are promoting physical activity and introducing kids to a lot of different options, it will become a habit and become embedded in their daily routine and be a lot easier to continue throughout the lifespan. Next slide. And one more thing that I think is really important to mention here is that all individuals, all children have the right to play. And so when we're thinking about access to play, access to physical activity, sports and leisure, it's important that we think about breaking down the barriers of the environment that would prevent people with disabilities from accessing their world, instead of focusing on the disability itself as a barrier. So we want to think about the environment in our home, in our school, in our community, and what things could be preventing children from participating. And we will get into that a little bit in the next section, how we can make the world more accessible for children with charge. But we want to, why participation is so important is that we want to think about the dignity of risk. And so that term is really important to think about. It really means allowing people to make their own decisions and try new things, even if there is risk involved. And so oftentimes with children with disabilities, we want to keep them safe, and we want to do everything we can to make sure that they are not in any sort of risk. But thinking about all other children in the world have the opportunity to take some risks and learn from those mistakes. And so it's very important that we provide those opportunities in a supportive and safe way for all children to take risks and to choose what they want to participate in. True inclusion means choice. And so we want to make sure that our children with charge also have that choice and are empowered in that way. So to talk a little bit more about how we can support those choices, here is Matt.
Thank you, Emily. Hello, everybody. So the next few slides that I'm going to talk about, a lot of it covers things that over the years, I've learned from all my students with charge. So, and it's just for a quick example, last week as I was working with a student, just independently playing, we had two suspended balls coming down from the ceiling and a little tumble form scooter, and just giving him the independence to play at will with it. He started doing a number of different skills, hitting the ball left hand to right hand, spinning it both hands, pulling himself with the ball on the scooter, problem solving when they got tangled, a number of different skills he was working on all by himself independently, just by providing a few little things, pieces of equipment, a couple of balls in the scooter chair, and in an environment that he could play, independent play. And then that reminded me, we don't really have a specific slide in our presentation on play. So that's what the next slide is. So learning begins with play. Just some of the things that, just what I mean by play is that kind of less structured. There's not a lot of rules. There's a lot of freedom. So within that, you can see a lot of problem solving, discovering interests, creativity and self-expression, initiation, independence, cause and effect. So there's many, many, many things. And so I think just, it doesn't have to be going out and doing something specific at some community facility. It can be playing in the backyard, at home, with family, and without a lot of fancy equipment. So, so I thought that was important. So we just added this slide in. Okay, Lauren, we can go to the next one. So this next slide, and we'll have Maebh is going to pull up an activity guide. And this is something I developed based on a lot of feedback I heard from parents over the years, and from my own personal feedback of taking students to places in the community that may say that they're inclusive or accessible, but in reality, they really weren't. So we developed this tool that basically consists of several different considerations to think of when going on or choosing activities, mostly in the community based. So I'm going to go through the several sections. And the first section focuses on really the individual or the student or the participant. And these are things that, like I said, you should consider. I might also add, we actually use this tool as a rating system to places in the community that we've taken some of our students, and we fill it out, and yes, if it meets the statement, and get a certain percentage of yeses, and just a way of rating facilities in our area or activities. So activity relevance, and this I think is really important because it really focuses on the individual, the participant, and it's always good to start something built on your interests, the individual's interests, skills, strengths. I've often seen over the years, if it has some meaning, the activity to the student, they're going to want to come back to it. So that's a good place to start. Having said that, I do have to say that sometimes it is, and I encourage it, to try something that you haven't done before. because sometimes some students might not have a whole lot of interests or interest that they don't know they have yet because they haven't tried something yet. So as Emily was talking about before, that risk, it is okay. I encourage you to take risks. Many times with my students, we've tried something like out of the blue that I never thought the student would like, and they ended up liking it. The other thing I want to say on it too is give it some time. Our students that I've worked with over the years, they might not have an interest in it or like it at first, but give it several sessions and effort, and it does take some time. So both sides, you want to select activities based on your interests and skills, but it's also good to try something new. Yes, we can move down now. And this you'll have access to, you should have access to it. So I'm not going to go through everything because we just don't have time. But let's go to the section 2 on facility accessibility. So these are some things that may seem somewhat basic, but I think it's important to check out the layout of the facility. Is it easy for the participant to maneuver around? Are there restrooms accessible? Is it conveniently located? Are you going to be able to get to it easy enough? This parking and clean, hazard-free, kind of basic things. We can move down to the next section. Okay, yeah. This is, the next 2 sections are kind of like the real important ones, besides the first one, I believe. Is there assistance that's needed? Do you need someone to help the participant first, to participate in the activity? If so, is that person allowed free of charge? Or does the facility provide someone to help? Is there any specialized equipment that you need for the activity? Do you need whatever it might be? Is there, and if so, is it provided by the organization? Are there any specific skills required for the activity? Do you have to be able to swim or be able to do certain things? And then the last one in this section, which I also think is very important, is the activity easily modified? Are you able to easily modify the activity? So we can go into the next section here. And okay, yeah. Are the people organizing or running the activity, are they able to easily and safely modify the activity if needed? Is there any specially trained personnel? Do they have the right certifications or qualifications to be doing the activity? And then are one-on-one sessions available? So these are some I think that's about, I think that's it on here. So I think those are just some things to think about, consider when you're looking for different activities in the community and to make the right choice. So I think we can go on to the next slides. Okay, on this slide, some popular activities. So we have 4 photos. We have one person on one of those Razor scooters, and another one on a bicycle that's a larger size tricycle, and then 2 students playing in a little pool outdoors, sitting. And then our last picture is of a student feeling with his hands a traverse climbing wall. So I'll just comment on the one picture first of the student at the rock wall. And this student, this isn't a good example of a student trying a new activity, but at kind of his own pace, slow pace, and he's really just feeling and getting comfortable. His first time really seeing it, didn't want to go really near it. And so this is a nice success for him. I've had students who sometimes it's taken, 1-2 years to warm up to activities, but through repeated exposure and positive experiences with it, they've returned, built confidence. And I can remember several years back, 10 years ago, a student came to our pool who wouldn't get near the pool. And by the time he graduated and left, he was swimming laps in the pool. So, that's where I think we need to have some. Can't expect, boom, jump right into an activity and be a superstar right away. Sometimes it does take some time. So, so this is just some example of some popular activities. And then I just want to say, along with patience and consistency, providing a predictable routine can be beneficial, along with having like a clear beginning, middle, and end of an activity can also be beneficial. We can go into the next slide. Okay, so on this slide, we have some other physical activities and 3 pictures. So we have a picture of what I call like small, fairly inexpensive equipment. Is a sand bell, which is it's a weight that has a soft texture to it. A lot of our students do like the texture of it, and it works nice because it's soft. If a student were to drop it on their foot, it wouldn't hurt. It works on good for grip and strengthening. The next photo is one of it's called a zip ball or a zoom ball. You can get it on Amazon, fairly inexpensive. This is a nice tool. We'll use it a lot with our students to work the upper shoulder, scapular, back area, which is a target area that's hard to kind of work with. So students do enjoy that. And then the third photo on this slide is a picture. It's actually a little picture schedule. So this will help some of the students understand the expectations and kind of like that beginning, middle, and end. And it has a picture of this activity we were doing, a hopscotch and a little line jump activity. So some other popular activities that we found, we will use some video-based activities. We use a Seconds Pro app that's been pretty popular, which is a circuit training app, which is nice because it has the timer, and it's a pretty inclusive app. You can customize it to whatever exercises or activities you want. And we've put it up on a big screen in our big auditorium. One year had 30 students from the whole school in, and everybody can just do the exercise at their own pace. It gives a countdown and it'll say the name of the exercise. The only thing, it doesn't have any pictures of the exercise. It's the only thing I don't like about it. But some examples of some of the equipment and activities that we used. Okay, how are we doing on time here? All right, I can go to the next slide. Is there another slide, Lauren, in this section? Okay, I think I'm passing it over to you, Emily.
Sure, I'm happy to talk about this. We're going to just go briefly into a few resources that are available for adapted sports and recreation. On this slide, we have a picture of Maeve swimming in the pool with a student. We can go to the next slide. So on this slide, there is a QR code to a Perkins website resource that has listed a lot of different ideas for resources that might be available in your community. Obviously, the resources that are available are very dependent on the region that you're in. So we highly recommend looking into state programs, locally funded programs, just doing a little research and trying to familiarize yourself with what's available in your area. And that's where you can use that resource that Matt shared in order to kind of gauge the accessibility and the appropriateness of the activity before trying it or after trying it, as just a tool to determine what might be the best choice. But additionally, if you're looking for more resources in the community, the Charge Syndrome Foundation website is a great place to start. We're going to go into a few more specific programs in a little bit. But one other resource that I will mention also is the Northwest Association for Blind Athletes. So there's a link on this slide as well to check out that website, just as a place to start. Next slide. So we, as people who work at Perkins and live in Massachusetts, are going to share a few local resources for adaptive equipment rentals. This is what we're familiar with in our area, but we know that there are similar programs in different geographic regions. So if you live close to us in New England, these are a few resources that you can check out in order to rent adaptive equipment. One thing that can be a barrier that families often run into with participation in sports and recreation is the equipment, right? It is expensive. It can be really bulky, difficult to store. Something like an adaptive bike, even if you are able to get funding for one and store it in your home, then if you want to go on a bike ride on a trail, you need to be able to transport that bike and have the resources to use it. So it can be really challenging. And so renting equipment is a really great way to participate as a family on your own time and be able to take advantage of some of this equipment that is available and not always being used. So again, if you live in our area, take a look at some of these resources. One resource on there is the Massachusetts DCR, which is the Department of Conservation and Recreation, and that exists in every state. So you can, whatever state you live in, you can look at that website too to get some ideas for adaptive equipment that might be available in your state for rental. And on this slide, we have a picture of two sisters using a tandem side-by-side bike together. Next slide. So lastly, really quickly, we will talk about grants and funding. Similarly to community resources, these are some resources for getting funding to purchase the equipment that you might need. We have a photo of a student riding a bike. We can go to the next slide. So similarly, we have some different funding sources listed here that are just something to look into. Obviously, every one of these funding sources is not going to be applicable to every child, or some of them depend on diagnosis specific or the region that you live in. But if you've been looking for some funding sources, this is a good place to start. Some of these are national organizations, some of them are local. I want to emphasize the Charge Syndrome Foundation Ethan Wolf Recreational Assistance Program. I believe that there's a link to that in the chat, so definitely check that out. That's a really, really great resource for getting funding for any type of recreational activity or equipment that is specific to the charge population. So that's a great place to start. And additionally, like I said, going to the Charge Syndrome Foundation website, reaching out to your state liaisons, or even just people in the community who have been through this before, other families, is a great way to gather some information and just have a starting point to be able to get access to anything that you need or that your child might need in order to fully participate in sports and recreation. Next slide. So finally, just to wrap it all up, here are some takeaways that we hope you gained from this presentation. The main one being that sports are for everyone, recreation is for everyone, play is for everyone. Participation in sports and recreation improves the health and well-being of the individual with the disability. It's really, really important. And it also has a positive impact on family, caregivers, and the whole community surrounding that individual. Early access is so important. So it's never too soon to start looking for resources and encouraging participation. There are tons of providers and organizations that would love to help and break down any barriers. So if you've been struggling with access for your child or someone you know, please reach out to us, to the Charge Syndrome Foundation, to people in your network and in your community, and get that help that you need. And then finding the right fit is key to long-term participation. So we are not in the business of forcing any child to do something that they don't want to do. So it's really important that we take that time to find out what is motivating for that child, what's important to them, what do they enjoy doing. And as Matt said, we support that exploration of new activities, which might mean repeated exposure to something, even if they don't take to it the very first try, but allowing participation in a wide variety of activities so that individuals can find what they enjoy and get better at it and build those lifelong healthy habits. So we can move on to any questions that you might have and start a discussion. Thank you for listening.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so very much, everyone. I also wanted to add to your wonderful presentation and the information that you shared about our programs with the foundation that, yes, absolutely. We have our ERAP program, the Ethan Wolf Recreational Activities program that we you could just think about anything that you could utilize. We don't have some hard rules about only these things can or cannot do. We look at every application on a one by one case. But the goal of this program is what you all shared today: provide recreational opportunities for everyone. So I put the link for the page on the chat, and there's also a Spanish application for the same program. So please feel free to apply and or check for any of those applications. And if you need any help, just always feel free to reach out to me. Another thing that I wanted to comment on is that yes, you did share some wonderful resources for the Massachusetts area, but if you are not in that area, you gave some great examples, and one of them is to reach out to your family liaisons. We try to have one in every state available to share with you local resources, so they might be a good resource for you to have, and they could share some information about other local opportunities. I also added that link to the chat box so you could all take a look at it. So now, my wonderful panelists, we have two questions that were shared by Guadalupe Duran in Spanish. So I translated them for you, and they're very good questions that do have to do with access. The first question, she said, in her experience, most coaches and sports facilitators do not accept children with disabilities to participate in their activities. How can I advocate for my child?
Hi, my name is Lauren. And I just want to say that first off, we are so sorry to hear that that's been your experience. That's incredibly frustrating. And that is a form of discrimination that just shouldn't exist. Sports are for everyone. Sports should be inclusive. And we certainly want to help support you in getting your child meaningfully included in sports. I think one good area to start, if there would be to look for specifically inclusive programming that's in your area, if it exists. It doesn't exist everywhere. If your child is working with service providers like adaptive physical education teachers like Matt and Maeve, PTs like Emily and myself, occupational therapists, orientation and mobility specialists, any providers that are involved in understanding how your kid moves through space, and what activities they enjoy doing. It might be nice to see if they would be willing to connect with the community program to provide them the support, because they're probably coming to that conclusion out of a space of ignorance and not knowing. And if we can take the burden off of you and help to provide that information about what it means to make it accessible, I think that would be a way to go about it. If you do have other families in the charge community that are in your area, I would certainly rely on that support and also rely on the charge liaisons in your area to try to find out what might be a more welcoming environment. Certainly that the resource that Matt was talking about, to start to look at programming in your area and seeing what might be a good fit and what might be willing to access, and even bringing that to a program or a facility to say, hey, these are the considerations that we have to think about for our child to meaningfully participate. How can you help meet us on some of these points of access? I think also just it's really important to know that the research shows that participants with disabilities and also non-disabled participants who are participating in an inclusive program, they all benefit from it. It helps to build community, it helps to build awareness and acceptance. And it's just like Emily was talking about earlier, just so important for the community and the family. It makes a huge difference to make sure that everyone can access the activities that we all enjoy. So just coming to them and saying like, hey, this isn't just about my kid. This is about building a better community for all of us. And hopefully a community sports program or, like a local YMCA or something like that, that would have meaning for them, and that they just need some help with the resources to create that access without all of the burden being on you and your family to make that link.
Awesome. Very good. Thank you so much, Lauren. And a lot of times it just takes the first step. A lot of people are, scared about, they don't know how to include children with disabilities in their activities. And just sometimes it just takes one person to take that first step. So very good answer. Thank you, Lauren. And the second question we have, mom says, my child is deaf and needs an interpreter to access sports, but the regional center does not want to provide one. What can I do to help him have access?
I'm happy to answer this. My name is Maeve. I work alongside Matt as an adapted physical education teacher. Again, I'm sorry to hear this. It's in 2026. It's unfortunate to hear that people are not willing to provide when legally they might be obliged to provide. Not knowing where which state the question is coming from. I think to bridge the gap, perhaps as Lauren said, when coaches are so unwilling, naive, ignorant, sometimes making yourself available, although it is, again, another thing that a parent has to do, to say, can I stay and act as the interpreter, maybe while that coach gets to know your child, see their skills, understand that they can play too, and they are a valid member, perhaps could allow for some acclimation or warming up to just including somebody who has different needs. I think also reaching out to, again, your charge representative, I think, and asking for perhaps some advice. I think reviewing even local laws and reminding people that there are legal requirements for including people with all types of abilities. There's a place for everyone, and everyone has a place, and play, sports, and physical activity is the perfect platform to exercise that. I also, an excellent suggestion, we have a chat going on behind the scenes, and the suggestion was something like, if your child is familiar with a low-tech communication device or communication board, with some options, questions, responses that you could facilitate with the coach, whether it has directions on there like stop, go, fast, slow, tired, break, finished, more simplistic things that, again, can help to bridge that communication breakdown, which often is just initial. It's just, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do with someone who's deaf. I'm just going to push you away. No, welcome you in, just take it step by step and take it really slowly. Those would be just some suggestions that I hope are helpful to answer that one.
Yes, great. Thank you so much. So at the beginning of your presentation, there was a phrase that was that really impacted me, that had to do with, taking that risk, be willing to take that risk, because a lot of times, the child is not comfortable trying anything new. But we do have a question from one of our parents, say, what strategies do you use to help with frustration? Because a lot of times, you try and try and try again, and it's always going to be a process. So how can you keep your child motivated and help deal with frustration?
Yeah, and I think we all experience frustration with learning new skills. So I think that's a good place to start. And when someone has different sensory access to an environment, of course, that's a much higher risk that someone's going to get confused or frustrated or intimidated by the environment that we're in. So again, I would encourage you to lean on the team that you have available to your child. Something like having a speech therapist or a social worker writing a social story, if you're able to tell them about the activity that you want to bring your child to, that then could say, like, this is the activity that's going to happen. Here's what it's going to look like. And just kind of preview so that they have a sense of what they're getting themselves into through whatever communication mode would benefit your child. I think, previewing and like looking at the accessibility, again, referring to that worksheet, like knowing beforehand how far of a walk is it going to be from the parking lot into the building, how much like physical demand, like stairs to get in the building might there be, what kind of support does the program have, what kind of equipment might your child need to access that program. I volunteer with a lot of different adaptive sports programs, and they want your child to come. They have the resources, they have the materials. And if you're able to just give them a sense of who your child is and what their support needs are, then they'll accommodate for you to try to lower that barrier and limit frustration when it's actually time to do the activity. So I think those are all resources. And then we talked earlier in the presentation, Matt was saying how important it is that the program has a structured routine. I volunteer with programs that every program, everyone introduces themselves. They do an introduction circle. They talk about the activity and the goal for the day. They use a schedule system that has written words, that has pictures, that has different communication styles available, so that people can preview that. And then we do stick as best as possible to that routine and do a closing circle. And I think that kind of environment is really great for individuals with charge, where you have that routine, that beginning, middle, end, and you know what to expect. And then also, final thought is just a lot of the times people with disabilities benefit from having one-on-one sessions and then group sessions in an activity, so that they can build the skills in a calmer, quieter, more focused and individualized environment, and then carry them over in a larger group. So programs that have both of those models can be really beneficial to help manage frustration, learn the skills, and then bring it into the larger setting.
Perfect. Perfect.
And
Thank you.
hi, this is Matt. I'm sorry to cut you off. And just to add on, if I could, to what Lauren said, two more things came to mind. One is to start slow and gradual. So introducing part of the activity, or, for example, with the swimming pool, coming over to it, just checking it out, feeling the water, and then doing it with the student or your child. Also, kind of modeling, showing this is okay, it is safe, and incorporating any choices you can, so that they have, if they want to be finished with it at a certain time, then move on. But start slow, slower duration, break the activity down if you can, and then gradually build up. And the other thing is, you want them to, when they finish the session or the time, on a high, a positive. Students, all of us want to, if we have a negative experience with something, we don't want to go back to it. So we want to end on a positive. Just a couple other things to add on. Thank you.
Yeah, that was very good. Thank you. Any other suggestions? I think that was pretty good. So right along those lines, we have a question regarding how do you facilitate interactive play with non-disabled peers? So now we're going to, to try to see, that one-on-one with other kids around them. How can you help facilitate that?
I think that's a really good question, Maeve, again here. Children are children, and they are less predisposed to, I think, societal norms than adults perhaps could have developed over the years. In our setting at school, oftentimes the teacher giving the instruction, you're just a teacher, or you're just like my parent. Oftentimes removing yourself and offering something like a different form of media. So a video of the student themselves or something on a television screen that someone could do side by side removes you, parent, coach, teacher, enforcing almost a forced interaction that might not be very organic, might be a little socially awkward. Suddenly, if you're visually able to access it, both people are looking at the same image, or if it's something around music. I think removing sometimes the atmosphere and creating it to be more organic does tend to help with, if it's an exercise video, that we can both do the exercises, might be doing two different forms of exercise due to, physical restraints or constraints that an individual might have, but they're both working together side by side. Also, I think secondary to that, interactive, in your question, you said, how do you facilitate interactive play? It's interactive if it's play. So like Matt said, you have a suspended ball in the yard, like a tether ball, a beach ball. You have lightweight materials that if they do, hit off a body or they're not gonna hurt anybody. I think again, water play, things like that, things that typically children or young adults gravitate toward. We shouldn't diminish how important those are just in a natural environment, and how naturalistically people, children with or without disabilities, can just come together through play. You can certainly, manufacture and set up bowling, or set up, get a soccer ball and a soccer goal, and have things in the environment that people can then just go and check out themselves. But I do think looking at other forms of media maybe, and sometimes taking a little bit of a step back to allow and permit, if it's safe to do so, someone with a disability, someone without, to just interact organically in that way. I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, hi, this is Matt again. Just to add on quickly to what Maeve was saying, just to emphasize the importance of this independent free play, just with anything you have around. And remember to have fun, be silly. I don't know how many times in class when we've just broken out a bunch of different small pieces of equipment, and just to see what the students will do. And then we start doing something, tossing it, kicking it, rolling it down our back or whatever, or rolling around. And we found students interested in seeing new skills. So just remember it doesn't have to always be structured. We're going to do this, although that does help, but a little bit of balance between some kind of free independent play and allows for creativity, and you playing with them can kind of model some things, and you'll be surprised the skills and interests you see that come out of it. It's been my experience.
And to give that same question a small twist, we were discussing strategies on how to motivate that peer-to-peer interaction with another child their age. How about any tips that you could share about including siblings? That a lot of times they're such an important role within the family and could be a great motivator for our children. So, any specific tips on how to include siblings?
Yeah, I mean, I think picking an activity to start with that might be a shared interest. Like, for example, we mentioned that swimming tends to be a very popular activity for individuals with charge because of all the wonderful sensory input it gives. And so being in a pool environment, like Matt was saying, and Maeve was saying, just kind of creates this space where there's that natural, organic free play and interaction. But so I think coming from a place of shared interests, not having demands on it, that it's just something that exists. Um, you know, people with charge because of their low vision or blindness, they might need a tandem cycle set up. So that's a really wonderful opportunity to maybe first model as the adult doing tandem riding with like the goal of as the siblings get older, maybe moving towards that as an activity. I think it's just so incredibly beneficial to have those siblings interact in that way. And I think it's so, for lack of a better word, like normalizing. I think when you have someone who has high support needs and complex medical needs, that, it's so much focus ends up being on the medical care and the educational access, and that it's just a normal thing for kids to play together, to do sports together, or even it's a normal thing for the child with a disability to be participating in an adaptive sport, and that the sibling has to go and sit on the sidelines and watch the game the way that the individual with charge might go and sit on the sidelines. Like, it's just such a family building activity to do.
Yeah, Matt again, and I think to add on to what Lauren said, maybe, scheduling a little like family playtime, on Tuesday afternoons or whatever, and have it in, family room or the backyard, like a familiar place and environment, might be something that could be fun. And the other thing is really wherever you're doing it is creating that environment that they can communicate together, play together, and equipment that could be good to be shared. It could go a long way with it too. Just some other suggestions maybe.
Yes. Oh, maybe you want to share what you included in the chat box. Those are very good ideas too.
Yeah, just included some, as we were talking, some very popular activities, as Matt said, to just play, to have available. I'm not saying you have to go and purchase these things. A local Facebook group asking anybody doing a yard sale or a clear out, there are things you could pick up. Again, just at school, bubbles, jumping, any form of jumping, whether it's, on a mini trampoline or just getting that, again, like Emily said, like that proprioceptive input, those ribbons, kind of like the gymnastics, rhythmic gymnastics, sensory scarves, hoops anything that spins for some reason is very popular. Beach balls, again, inexpensive. Oftentimes, again, the spinning colors. And then football, something about maybe the shape of a football, how it gets narrow at the edges, are also just popular things that our students have enjoyed.
Yeah, that's true. And another question. So, when you think about recreational activities, you most of the time think about being outdoors. And now that summer is here, which is a great opportunity to play and be outside, but a lot of times it's very hot. Or, we have a winter like the one that we just had, that a lot of times the kids are indoors and they're not going to have access to being outside. What kind of activities do you recommend that could be done indoors?
Uh, I'll hand this one over to Matt and Maeve because they do so many indoor activities with our students throughout the year.
What first comes to mind is just, I think some of the things that Maeve had just, equipment that Maeve had just said. I think first, I think you have to have, if it's in the house, kind of an area that's kind of free of obstacles that you can kind of play. So I think, using the beach balls. We've done
I'm thinking, Matt, sorry to jump in, but some of the heavy work that you guys have done, because we've talked a bit about proprioception, about getting that, trying to help, especially with the low tone, with people with charge, trying to get that input to their bodies. So, Matt mentioned that sandbag before, but even just like putting stuff in a laundry basket, having the kid pick up something that's maybe a little bit on the heavier side, ankle weights or sandbags, as long as they won't drop them on their feet, even the cans of food, and just squatting down, picking up, carrying them over, putting them in the laundry basket, maybe using the laundry basket as a push sled. I know in APE and our OTs, they do a lot of push sled activities, kind of that heavy work to get that sensory input is a really good way to get the Zoomies out in the winter. Or if you have access to a local gym or an indoor swimming pool, other great ways to get that sensory input and physical activity when you're indoors.
Yeah, to say that too. I agree that I think that those are all great activities for inside the house, and something that we don't always think about is that the coldest of the winter and the hottest of the summer are great times to try to get involved in some of those community programs, whether it's at your local YMCA or some other sort of indoor facility. I think when the weather is nice outside, it's on the forefront of everyone's mind to get outside and play. But sometimes during those tough times of the year, we end up getting stuck inside and not having opportunities to participate. So thinking ahead a little bit, looking forward to winter, trying to get something set up once a week or twice a week, so that you already have those built-in opportunities to get out of the house and to be physically active during those months when the weather is not going to cooperate, can be really helpful.
Yeah. And I like that idea about helping with chores and laundry. I'm sure most parents will too.
Sometimes that's really motivating. It can be really motivating for kids too. It's, a lot of kids don't necessarily want to do chores, but especially when, for a lot of children with charge who enjoy the structure and the routine and just want to be helpful, want to be included, and feel like they're part of something and being helpful around the house, that can be really motivating too.
Yeah, just reminded me of one activity that we've done in our gym that you could do at home too. It's just basically just clean up the room. So we put out a bunch of equipment, and then we put a bunch of finished bins in different corners or one section, and they gotta go. Someone's got to go all around, explore, pick up all the stuff, and sort them or toss them behind the one big thing. So something like that could, if you have the space or room, I could see a lot of the kiddos liking that. And then for some of the older kids, some of the things that Lauren had mentioned would go a long way. Those sand bells and stuff like that. But it can be a challenge during the real hot days and the cold winter days too, for all of us.
Great, thank you. We have one last question from Steve. And Steve, I directed you to look at the chat box. He was asking about ideas of what to do, about adaptations to a tandem bike that the child might be getting close to, maybe getting too big or outgrowing it, and maybe share some great suggestions of things that could be done.
Yeah, I think there's a good mix of options depending on what someone needs that can go either like an upright bike, like they have those kind of ride-alongs that can attach to the rear of an existing upright bike, versus getting into the more tandem bike territory. So there's very supportive tandem bikes where for someone with like higher physical support needs who maybe can't participate in pedaling. But there's also side-by-side tandems, recumbent tandems, where someone would be able to participate in the pedaling. And if I could screen share some of the options that Maeve pulled up. So this would be that recumbent style. So you're both seated. It really helps with someone who's having a balance challenge because you have those extra wheels to keep yourself from tipping over, so you can see the front wheel. There's a wheel on each side. And then let me see if I can get the other one up. This side-by-side style where you're right there, which is really great too if, you know, somebody might need like prompting to be redirected to put their chewy in their mouth, or they're getting frustrated and you want to make sure that you're keeping your body safe. You're right there next to them. They are interesting to steer. It's very good off, like on a separated path or something like that, but it allows you to like be right there, help provide physical support for someone, help perhaps like manage some unsafe behaviors, and just also just get to be side by side, nice and close, and enjoy the experience together.
All right, perfect. And I copied and pasted the links on the chat box. It didn't show up at the beginning, but now they should be. Oh, no, I have the wrong ones. Let me make sure I have the right ones. And while I do that, do you have any last words of inspiration, or what will be like the last message that you would like to share with our families tonight?
I think for me, I think it just benefits everybody to come together and have this community around recreation and leisure and being active. I think we outlined just so many different ways that it benefits not just the person who's doing the physical activity, but everybody else. And I know that there is so much to manage if you have physical disability or complex disability, or someone in your family does, so that it might feel like a burden to then have this additional push to get out in the community. But I think that the benefits far outweigh the costs. And I appreciate everything that everyone does to help create this space and build this community, allow for this inclusion, and just make the world a better place.
Perfect. Anybody else? I think Lauren just did such an amazing job wrapping everything up, and we would like to thank you all for being with us today, for answering our questions and sharing such great tips. If you might want to share the presentation with us, we have some requests from some families to translate them in Spanish, so we want to do that, as well as if you could also share the wonderful the checklist that you have, Matt, that we could try to also translate it in Spanish and share it with the families. That'll be awesome. We did record this wonderful presentation, and we're going to be sharing both the English and the Spanish recordings within a week or so. I will be emailing everybody that registered, and we'll be sharing that with you. So thank you so much, everybody, and let's get out and play. Have a wonderful night, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Thanks.